Hello and welcome. I hope your coffee is warm because today we are going aggressive. We are building a Boros deck. So what is Boros? Boros is all about aggression. It is about aggression in which you can say that you are doing the right thing, but really you are just there for the aggression, let's be honest. The colors of Boros are red for doing whatever you want to do and white for being orderly. So you are working together to be aggressive. You have many soldiers, for example, to do the work for you, but you also want to join in on the fun because it is really about doing what you want to do. I feel like Boros is a little bit more red than white. The themes in Boros are often angels. I mean, the leader of the actual Boros is an angel, always. Giants, very much like giants in Boros because they are a bit bigger, but they can also be fit into an army, which is definitely a rule for the Boros. You need to be able to fit in an army. Even if you are Lorehold, you should still be able to fit into a group of people and do the same thing all together. Soldiers, they really like soldiers because they fight together so well. They aren't as big as giants or as strong as angels, but they are needed and they will be sacrificed for the greater good. We also like fighting, going on adventures. We do like some adventure. We kind of want to do an adventure where we are helping other people, usually. And we like history because of Lorehold mostly, but also because we trade stories and we're not all about the now. So what to expect for this video, we will be going through the strengths and weaknesses first, then we will be doing a top amount of commanders and their archetypes which they are in for Boros. So you can choose your Boros commander, and then we will go through how to build the core, at least, of a Boros deck, which has been shortened a bit, just to let you know what you might expect. Now for the strengths and weaknesses, first we always have to look at the purpose of Boros, which is to be the aggressive one at the table. You are in the same group as, for example, Rakdos, weirdly. Actually, Boros are pretty good friends with the Rakdos, in a weird way. But you are here to be aggressive. You are here to make sure that other people can just do whatever they want. You are here to put a clock on people. So you are so much alike Rakdos that oftentimes you will find yourself in an alliance with Rakdos players or other aggressive players for that matter. But you are slightly different because you do try to live through your aggression. Rakdos is all out, you are a little bit less all out. You still want to survive, you have some life link or life gain in your decks often, and you probably will have a second swing at things. You also like extra combats, by the way. So you are very aggressive. You are good at extra combats, but you are also good at making a lot of tokens, making them stronger and being strong because of the amount of people you have. You can also stay alive after the aggression. You can sometimes come back because you have Red's impulse draw or something like that. And you can start to steamroll because of it. Now you are also great at removal and board wipes, so you can be a little bit controlling too. But you really miss the card draw and ramp for that. And those are your biggest weaknesses. Card draw and ramp are so important in Commander that missing them in your color combination is really bad. And you kind of need a big army to be strong, usually. For example, if you are in extra combats, well, that doesn't really do anything if you don't have the creatures. So you attack, you profit from that attack, and then you attack again. But you do need to profit for a little bit before attacking again. Problem is, you can't really stop, so you will have to continue even if you don't profit. So make sure that you have enough ways to profit from your attacks. Also, protect your people for the attack. Protect your creatures, protect your allies, because you need allies to defeat the other opponents. And attack when you can, and when you can't, you still have to attack, like I said. Now, small jump scare, but we are starting with actually, I think, maybe the best Boros commander out there right now, which is Arabella, the Abandoned Doll. Why is this the best? Because it really is aggro in its name and game. So Arabella, Abandoned Doll, a little bit of a flavor here, where every night Corey threw the unsettling doll away, and every morning it was back on the shelf, its eyes following her every move. This feels like Boros because we always come back. And this toy is actually very strong. Arabella says when it attacks, it deals X damage to each opponent, and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control with power 2 or less. So you're a power 2 or less deck, and I feel like this is Boros calling in a nutshell. We have seen this before in Mono White with Delny Streetwise Lookout, which is a doubler of triggers of creatures with power 2 or less, and also creatures you control with power 2 or less cannot be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. We hate them, don't we, in Boros? So that means with Arabella, you will get a doubled trigger, and you will be able to attack in pretty easily with Arabella or all of your other small creatures. Other things that are good here are, for example, Anim Pakal, because she makes a lot of gnome artifact creature tokens, does become stronger, which is kind of a shame, but making the tokens is of course very good. You want Impact Tremors, because she will deal 1 damage to each opponent for every creature that enters, and you will need a lot of ways to create creatures too. Raid Bombardment, sort of the same, works with power 2 or less, and then deals 1 damage to target to the player or planeswalker the creature is attacking. And Song of Toten Tans, which is an X spell like a Fireball, which we also like here, but it creates 1/1s that cannot block, because we don't really block anyways. They also gain haste, meaning they can immediately attack, and every one of them will deal an extra damage because of Arabella, and you will gain life, so you definitely don't need to block, right? Winota, I think second place for me. I usually don't do like the telling of which is the best, but I feel like this is pretty good as well. It was competitive for a bit of time, and I feel like it's still in CEDH, but you can play it casually as well, even though people will be a little bit afraid. Winota says whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, again with the attack triggers, you look at the top 6 cards of your library, and you may put a human card, creature card from among them onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible until end of turn, the human, and you put the rest of the cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. So you will want a bunch of humans that do great stuff. Let's say Blade Historian, which gives your creatures double strike. Really like it because you will have a lot of creatures to attack with, and you will need things that aren't humans, preferably ones that are actually a little bit smaller. Weird thing here is that you will want big humans and smaller non-humans. Usually, of course, you can still use big non-humans, but this is the general game plan. One I really like is doubling the damage that you're doing, which is Angra's Marauders, which is also a human, and Combat Celebrant, because when it hasn't been exerted yet, you may exert it as it attacks, and when you do, you untap all creatures you control, and after this phase there will be an additional combat phase, so you can attack again, get more creatures, and go on that way. Another way to do this is Breath of Fury, which is sort of from Boros. We have a bunch of Boros soldiers, which are, I think, enhanced by the Rakdos, but we don't mind, actually, because we like the Rakdos. I keep saying that, but it's true. This one, you get to enchant a creature, and when that creature deals combat damage to a player, you sacrifice that creature, and we love doing that because we love sacrificing our own people for the greater good. And the greater good means you get to attack again. And if you get to attack again, guess what? You get another human, and then you can sacrifice that. So this is almost an infinite, but you need enough creatures in your deck. But almost an infinite. Next commander is Equipments, which Boros is also pretty good at, because of Mono White mostly. But Nahiri, Forged in Fury, is easier to cast for every equipment that you have, and will give you new equipments with which Nahiri will be easier to cast after that. So it's basically ramp. right? So whenever an equipped creature you control attacks, you exile the top card of your library and you may play that card this turn, meaning you actually have a form of draw in your Boros commander. You may even cast equipment spells without paying their mana costs. Now what is good with this? Also making the equipping of the equipments 0 mana. That means you pay 0 mana and you probably will have 0 mana because you are in Boros. Bladehold War Whip I think is a great example of an equipment that works really well because it creates a 2/2 and you will want equipments that also make creatures because then, well, you can actually use the equipments. Also, equip abilities you activate of other equipment cost 1 less to activate, and the equipped creature will get double strike, which is just good. But Sigarda's 8 is really good, really good in this deck because, well, your equipment spells will be able to be cast as though they had flash. So when you exile that card, you can play it for free and play it immediately. And whenever an equipment enters the battlefield, you also get to attach it to target creature you control immediately, meaning that in the attack with which you triggered Nahiri, you will also get to attack with that equipment. One I also like is Hexblade Wallbreaker because it says whenever the equipped creature attacks, if it's the first combat phase, you get another one. This is great because extra combats are great in these kinds of decks. A new one I want to highlight is Thorin, the King of Durin's Folk, which is a 5 mana. Again, they are so expensive, the Boros commanders, and we really can't have that, but it's pretty good because it also ramps you. It says whenever Thorin or another dwarf you control enters, you create a treasure, which I count as ramp because we are hedonistic. Other dwarves also get extra power for each artifact token you control. So you want to build up your dwarves and other things, mostly dwarves, and then they will get a power for every artifact token you control. Do mind that these work with tokens, so not with your usual equipments. Of course, there are some equipment tokens that can be good. Magda definitely needs to get in here because it's basically a Thorin in mono red, so a little bit less of the power, but cheaper. Other dwarves you control get an extra power, so it does that once, and whenever a dwarf becomes tapped, you create a treasure token. Also, you can sacrifice 5 treasures to look for a dragon, put it onto the battlefield. Really good ability, but do we want dragons in our Lord of the Rings dwarf deck? Not really. Or Hobbit. Gimli, we do want in here, definitely. Double Strike becomes better for every legendary creature that enters the battlefield, and then when it deals combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token. This is just a creature that grows, but it's also very flavorful. What is really good are Xorn, because it's a 3 mana creature that will give you another treasure whenever one is created. And Thorin will create a treasure token every time a dwarf enters, so it doubles that effect. And tripling the amount of artifact tokens you are creating is Academy Manufacture, because it creates a clue in the food whenever you create a treasure token. So that means also that your commander will give +3 power whenever you use, whenever you get a treasure, because you get the other 2 tokens. We have a partner pair that is really popular in Boros, which is Ardenn, who will allow you to put any number of auras and equipment onto target permanent or player. And then Rograkh, which is a 0 mana commander. It has 0 power and 1 toughness, but it starts with First Strike, Trample, and Menace. So you want to grow the Son of Rograkh, and then you use the Ardenn ability to put all of your equipments and auras onto Rograkh, and then you kill your opponents with commander damage, is basically the plan. So things that are really good here are, for example, Colossus Hammer, which is just 1 mana, which fits with your game plan of very small creatures. And then it's A to equip usually, but of course you can do that for free with your other commander, and then your Rograkh will be a 10/10 without flying, instead of a 0/1 without flying. Commander's Blade also very good because it gives your commander unblockable from all of the strong colors. And all that glitters that will strengthen your commander for every enchantment or artifact, so equipment you control. Next commander is Quintorius, which is a planeswalker, but you can play this one as a commander. This one works with graveyard synergies, and Quintorius just wants you to look through your history, so your deck in this case, or maybe your graveyard you can say, and grave rob yourself. So whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, you create a 3/2, which is a spirit, which is notable. Also, it's red and white, so it has a color identity, which is also sometimes notable. The abilities of Quintorius are that you can discard a card and draw 2 and mill a card, meaning you get 2 cards into your graveyard, one of which you have chosen yourself, and then you get to draw 2 cards, which also means that you get to refuel. It is card advantage even, because you lose 1 card to gain 2. Well, you also played Quintorius, so you need to do this multiple times for it to be advantage, but still. Also, you can -4 Quintorius, which is easy to do. Actually, not really an ultimate in that sense, because you can use it immediately. But your spirits, which you create with the first ability, will gain double strike and vigilance, meaning they get to hit for 6, and they get to block after. Great things to use are, for example, Currency Converter, because it's a 1-mana artifact. Whenever you discard a card, you may exile the card from your graveyard, meaning you immediately get to create the 3/2 whenever you discard. So either you discard with Quintorius or with this ability, draw, discard for 2 mana and tapping the converter. And then later you can put the exiled cards back into your graveyard, so you can use them again. And then if it's a land, you create a treasure token, and if it's a non-land, you can create another 2/2 token, or another token which is a 2/2 instead of a 3/2. Sarah Paragon allows you to create or to play something from your graveyard every turn. They do have to be mana value 3 or less, and they get exiled when they get put back into the graveyard, so it's not going on, it's not infinite in this sense. Containment Construct is a better version of Currency Converter, because it's a 2-mana card that says when you discard a card, you may play it, and the card also got exiled, so you also get to trigger Quintorius again. Even better if it is on the plains, because this one says put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library, also getting the card out of your graveyard, and just for, I would call this 2 mana. It is a tapped land, but we are in 2 colors, so we can kind of get away with that. Also, Squee, definitely good here, because it's 3 mana and you can play it whenever, or you can play it over and over from your graveyard. So that means you get a 1/1, but you also get that 3/2 every time. Next commander is Lightning, the Army of One. Lightning is a great commander for Boros, because she doubles all of your non-first strike, non-double strike damage. So whenever Lightning deals combat damage to a player, until your next turn, if a source would deal damage to that player or a permanent that player controls, it deals double that damage instead. It has first strike, or meaning that Lightning attacks first, you get to do that damage, and then all of your other creatures that don't use the first strike ability will deal double damage. Also works with non-creatures, so do mind your lightning strikes, for example, which will then deal 6 damage. Aurelia is really good here because it gives you extra combats. Any other thing that gives you extra combats also really good, because then, for example, Lightning's first strike will also be doubled that time. Lightning also says whenever Lightning deals combat damage to a player until your next turn, nothing where it says you can't do it more than once. So if you get to attack with Lightning multiple times, you can definitely double your doubling. I think that is how it works. Wait one moment. Yes, you do know that it is a strong ability when you need to look for it. But yeah, Lightning's ability actually works multiple times, and that means you get to deal ×4 damage. So do this over and over, and this will definitely be a great staggering effect. Next commander is Nelly Borca, the Impulsive Accuser. This one is actually from a set that no one liked. It's a 4-mana commander that when she attacks, you suspect a creature, meaning they get menace and cannot block. then you goad all suspected creatures. So all of the creatures you suspected before will also then attack again. This is great and flavorful because in the Boros we sometimes accuse people who weren't meant to be accused, and they will get to attack, and we actually like that. So secretly we really want to accuse people so that they get to become actual criminals. Second ability, whenever one or more creatures an opponent controls deal common damage to one or more of your opponents, you and the controller of those creatures each draw a card. So it is also a group hug deck in that sense. What is good here? Disrupted Quorum, for example, to goad all of the creatures you don't control. Actually got an artist proof from this one, so might have to do or want to do a video about Siddharth's art soon. Vengeful Ancestor, definitely really good because it goads creatures, but also whenever a goaded creature attacks, Vengeful or that creature deals 1 damage to its controller. Bloodthirsty Blade, we don't really care about it being 1 creature or 1,000. Well, maybe 1,000 would be really cool, but Bloodthirsty Blade works just as well to get that card out of your opponents. And Agger's Cause, definitely really good because it works with suspected creatures to then exile them. So it's a 4-mana exile ability first, but then when Agger's attacks again, you get to exile another suspected creature. So it's a 1-2 punch where you get to, actually remove a creature if you don't want them to attack your opponents or they are a bit too dangerous. Comeuppance, definitely good because you will be attacked a lot in this deck, and in this sense you can then prevent the damage that will be dealt to you and deal that damage to their creatures or your opponents themselves. One I really like, a commander, is Feather the Redeemed. This one definitely gets a lot of heat, but I feel like it's one of the first Boros commanders that was actually interesting. Many of the other ones are just lords in disguise. But this one says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery that targets a creature you control, you get to exile that card that was targeting instead of putting it into your graveyard as it resolves, and then you get it back into your hand at the beginning of the next end step, meaning that every turn you can get it back. For example, Fist of Flame is a 2-mana instant that gives a creature a power and trample, a power for each card you've drawn this turn as well, and then draws you a card. So you can keep doing this because at the end of your or at the end of the turn you will get that card back anyways. Cards that multiply cards that target, of course, are also very good. For example, Leyline of Resonance can be played for free sometimes, and then whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single creature you control, you copy the spell, so you get 2 Fists of Flame. And Mavinda, Student's Advocate, gets a card that targets a creature back from the graveyard. So you may cast target instant or sorcery from your graveyard this turn. If it doesn't target a creature you control, it costs 8 more to cast this way. So you could do that, but it's a lot of mana. Kolodin, Triumph Caster, is the next commander. I think this one is really good and really shows what Boros is about. Kolodin gives your mounts and vehicles haste. We probably want to play him as a vehicle deck. And then also makes your vehicles that enter become an artifact creature until end of turn. So for the first time the vehicles entered, you can attack with them immediately. So you want some big things that want to attack and sometimes are hard to crew. Parhelion, for example, is 8 mana, but then gets to attack immediately and will create 2 4/4 angels with flying and vigilance that are attacking and then can later crew your Parhelion actually to make even more. Peace Walker Colossus is a sort of second commander in this deck because for 2 mana you get to crew a vehicle independent of how many crew or how high the crew cost usually is. Lorehold is the next commander. This one, I really like the dragons from Strixhaven, that first of all. This one gives your instants and sorceries in your hand Miracle 2, meaning that if you you may cast a card for its miracle cost when you draw it, if it's the first card you drew this turn. So the first card you draw will be 2 mana if it's an instant or sorcery. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you also get to discard a card and draw a card. This also means that instants then can be cast for Miracle 2 again, because you basically get a draw step on every turn. It's just you don't get the card advantage. So what is really good here is making sure that you have the right cards on top. Sensei's Divining Top is very good at that. It's a 1-mana artifact where you can look at the top 3 cards of your library, put them back in any order, and that is just exactly what you want, because you want to look at the top 3 cards of your library every time and choose the exact right card you want to gain from there. Library of Lang is a definite hard hitter here. It's a 1-mana artifact that says if an effect causes you to discard a card, you discard it, but you may put it on top of your library instead of into your graveyard, meaning that then later you can, when you discard that card, use it again. So it's basically sort of infinite way to use the cards you want with Lorehold. Approach of the Second Sun usually gets a lot of heat for being an instant win and not even a combo, but it's really not an instant win, and you need to actually get it back for the second time. But it's really good in this deck because instead of 7 mana, it will be 2. This sorcery, if it was cast from your hand and you've cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun, you win the game. This is what people hate because they feel like they can't do anything against it. Do play this in pots where your opponents probably play counter spells, because otherwise, yes, indeed, it might not be fun. But if it is not the second time you played the Approach of the Second Sun, you gain 2 life and you put it 7th from the top into your library. Of course, you will be very good at getting it back in this deck. Another way to go is playing just big sorceries and instants. Stormherd is 10 mana usually and will be discounted by 8 to just cost 2 mana. Sami is the, I think, next to last commander, yes. Sami is really good because Sami gives all of your spells affinity for artifacts, meaning they cost 1 less to cast for each artifact you control. Now you want to play this in a dedicated artifact deck, which is fun in Boros actually. Cards that we really like are Mystic Forge because it allows you to exile the top card of your library and then you may cast artifact spells from the top of your library and you can look at the top card of your library anytime. So this means if you find something that you don't like, you get to exile it with the Mystic Forge, and otherwise if it's an artifact you can play it. Why not make everything an artifact? Mycosynth Lattice is really good almost always, but definitely in this deck, because all of your lands, for example, will also be artifacts because of this. They also are colorless, and players may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. Kind of not necessary here, but the fact that everything will be an artifact is really good. Artifact lands are great for the same reason, and the Endstone is a flavor win and definitely a win in Mechanics 2. It's a 7 mana legendary artifact, but of course it will be way cheaper to cast because of Sami. And at the beginning of your end step, your life total becomes half your life, starting life total. This might be a drawback if you had a lot of life, but you also get to draw a card whenever you play a land or cast a spell, meaning you get to draw a card for everything. Otherwise, play very big other artifacts with which you can win the game, like Blightsteel Colossus, which has Infect and is an 11/11. Taii Wakeen, the actual last one, is I think my personal favorite Boros commander because of its uniqueness, and it works with Burn, which also feels Boros still. It's a 2 mana 2/3, not that special yet, but whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to a creature equal to that creature's toughness, so you basically headshot it, you draw a card. You can draw a lot of cards with this, and this is on a Boros commander. Then you can pay X to and tap Taii Wakeen to say, if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player this turn, it deals that much damage plus X instead. Meaning if you pump 10 mana into this and you deal 1 damage to a thing, it will do 11 damage. Cards that are great here, Repercussion. Whenever a creature is dealt damage, Repercussion deals that much damage to that creature's controller, meaning you can kill your opponent's creatures and then kill your opponent's stat, or like as well. Cards like Tectonic Hazard that deal 1 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. This means just that you will board wipe your opponents and your opponents. And I would say just go with many things that deal just 1 damage. I have a deck tag actually on Taii Wakeen if you want to hear more, but it's actually that simple and it's very easy to build, honestly. So try it for yourself or watch the deck tag. Now, I want to talk a little bit about two combos. Boros isn't really the best combo color combination, but there are some also in monocolors, but we will talk about the ones that require exactly Boros so that we cover all of them. Aurelia, the war leader, can be comboed with anything that makes more tokens of her, because having multiple Aurelias is just really good. It says whenever Aurelia attacks for the first time each turn, you untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. And you can put this in, I think, almost any Boros deck. Maybe not Taii Wakeen, but most of them want to attack. And Aurelia will give you another attack phase. Now, if you have Helm of the Host, which is 9 mana to equip, but can be easier to equip in an equipment deck, for example, you, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token of Aurelia if you equip it on her. And then the token isn't legendary, so you can keep all of your Aurelias. And the token gains haste, so it can immediately attack. This is perfect, because then you get to attack again. So as long as they don't kill Aurelia the first time, you will go on and on with multiple tokens. And in fact, you get an Aurelia at the beginning of your combat, so you actually don't have to attack with Aurelia. You just need her to survive with the Helm of the Host on her, and then you get infinite tokens, which are Aurelias, with which to attack together with your other creatures, of course. Another combo, which is a bit crude, but we like it that way, is Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight, which doubles the damage your permanents deal to players or permanents, and Heartless Hidetsugu, because it's a 5 mana Ogre Shaman that deals damage to each player equal to half that player's life total rounded down. Now, you do need to make sure that the doubling effect of the damage doesn't work on you too, because then everyone dies, which is also kind of fun. But Gisela, for example, only doubles the damage against your opponents and actually halves the damage done to you. So it's even better, but you've won anyways. Now, to build your deck, let's go over it theme by theme. First, ramp. This is really hard. Let's be honest. Solemn Simulacrum is, I think, one of the small ways in which you can ramp in Boros. Solemn Simulacrum is a 4 mana 2/2 that when it enters you get to ramp. That's it. Curse Mirror is also a kind of in this on a stick ramp theme, because it's a 3 mana artifact that gives you a red mana, and it may enter as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it as haste. So you can also attack with it first and then have it be a mana rock. Now, White has become a bit better at ramp, actually. Smothering Tithe is very expensive because it's white ramp, and it's pretty good. It's really good, actually. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they have to pay 2 mana or give you a treasure token. Land Tax is, I think, even better. It's a 1 mana enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent controls more lands than you, which will be the case in Boros, you may search your library for 3 basic lands and put them into your hand. Now, this is not ramp in the sense that you get more mana or faster than your opponents, but you will at least have a land onto the battlefield every time. Of course, we also have the mana signets like Arcane Signet or Boros Signet or Soul Ring, if you will, with which you can also gain mana, and which is actually ramp. For removal, you are really good at this. So I like Swords to Plowshares. I have hated on it a lot, but that is because I think it is overrated, but it's still pretty good. It's a 1 mana removal that exiles the creature, so that goes through indestructible, for example. Your opponents will just gain life equal to its power, but that doesn't really matter usually. Path to Exile is the same thing, but they get to ramp. White also has great removal that is very non-conditional, like Generous Gift, which targets a permanent but gives them a 3/3, and Stroke of Midnight, which targets a permanent but gives them a 1/1, which I feel like is better, but, well, it does have to be a non-land, maybe that is it. But I feel like Stroke of Midnight just should be played more than Generous Gift. But why do I have all of these hot takes about removal? I don't know. And why are they hot takes? I think they are just takes. Chaos Warp, also very very flexible because it says the owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then they get something random back, maybe. And Boros Charm, I think, is really good. Not that, well, it is kind of narrow or more narrow, but it is a Boros special. It gets to deal 4 damage to target player or planeswalker, so it gets to remove a planeswalker in that sense. Not really great removal otherwise, but I wanted to include it because you can definitely put it in most Boros decks, even though it's so conditional. Because it can also give all of your permanents indestructible or a target creature double strike, which can all be great uses in Boros decks. Rip Apart is also Boros and deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or can destroy an artifact or enchantment, which is actually very useful. And Vandal Blast I really like in the Red's apartment, because Red is really good at removing artifacts specifically. Vandal Blast can remove 1 for 1 mana, or all for 5 mana, which is definitely a great choice to have, because sometimes you don't want to do that in Boros because you have all of those mana rocks. But okay, you have the choice, it's good. Board wipes, you're also very good at. You have Red's board wipes, which are like Blasphemous Act, which will usually be 1 mana to deal 13 damage to each creature. And sometimes with a Boros Charm, you can, for 3 mana, give all of your creatures indestructible and kill all of your opponent's creatures. So it definitely goes with that. Chain Reaction, which deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield. Kind of the same thing here, but for 4 mana. And in white, we have cards like Austere Command, which is 6 mana, and you get to choose 2 things you want to remove, like all creatures with mana value 4 or greater, because you have only small things. And Farewell, which can exile all artifacts, enchantments, and graveyards, for example, because you don't use them anyways. Well, artifacts you kind of do. But yeah, you can choose also to not remove creatures, which I really like for Boros decks. For card advantage or card draw or looting or stuff like that, we have cards like Esper Sentinel, which will continue to give you cards, which is great. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell, you draw a card unless they pay X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power, and you also can of course increase this or double this trigger. Faithless Looting is a 1 mana sorcery that draws 2 and then discards 2. This loses you a card at first. Then with the flashback, it doesn't lose you another card at least. But it loses you 1 card because you pay the or you use the Faithless Looting, but you also get to choose which cards you get back. And sometimes you can use your graveyard to get some artifacts or whatever back. Big Score, sort of the same. 4 mana, draw 2, create 2 treasures, but you also have to discard a card. You don't lose a card with this. You actually break even. And you also get 2 treasure tokens, which can sometimes be very great extras. And Lorehold of the First Path. I really like these sharing draw options in white, because your opponent's drawing stuff is actually less bad in mono white or in Boros, because you are so much worse at it. So Lorehold of the First Path is a removal for artifacts or enchantments, so 1. And then you can tap Lorehold to have you and target opponent draw a card. Wedding Ring is in the same vein. It says when it enters the battlefield, you give another person a ring, so you are married now. And whenever an opponent who controls an artifact named Wedding Ring draws during their turn, you draw a card. And whenever an opponent who controls an artifact named Wedding Ring gains life during their turn, you gain that much life. This also means that if more opponents have Wedding Rings, this can become very fun. But because you are all married to each other. But you also get to draw together, gain life together, and in that way, it's a very fun time. Last one I want to talk about is Sunforger, definitely a Boros classic. There are even decks built around this. It's a 3 mana equipment that gives a creature 4 power. We already like this, but you also get 2 for 2 mana unattach, so unequip basically, Sunforger, and then search for a red or white instant with converted mana cost 4 or less and cast the card without paying its mana cost. For 5 mana, playing anything 4 mana or less is really good, and you can look through your library, and in this way this is a great tutor, and not enough people maybe are actually playing this. Now you also want to make sure that you have enough aggression in your deck. So you need your boots or your lightning greaves to give your creatures haste and protection. I also like cards like Deflecting Palm, which are called Aikido cards, with which you can deflect all damage done to you and then deal damage equal to the damage that you stopped to the source's controller. So that means that if something deals a lot of damage to you this turn, you get to actually deal a lot of damage to your opponent. This is important because your opponents might want to attack you because you attack them. Another way to do this is Teferi's Protection, which will not deal damage to your opponents, but it will keep you safe from anything until your next turn. Impact Tremors for aggression is also a great option because you will be playing a lot of creatures and they will each deal damage to your opponents. War Leader's Call does the same for 1 mana more, but also gives your creatures +1/+1, which we also like. And then, of course, we talked about this, but extra attacks are really good. Aurelia was an example, but you have more options for this. And Anthem effects like Akroma's Will, which I call an Anthem effect because it will give your creatures flying and double strike. You could also give them lifelink and protection from all colors, which means they basically get almost unblockable and lifelink, so you can actually survive. And then Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight will double your damage as well. So this is also a great Anthem effect. Now for Boros, you want to play aggressive, you want to actually survive, and you want your creatures to survive. So keep that in mind. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching and let me know what you think about this slightly changed format. Again, thank you and for actually everything.